The Russo-Ukrainian War, which started in February 2014, is an ongoing international conflict between Russia, as well as rebels backed by Moscow. Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine after the Revolution for Dignity and aided pro-Russian separatists fighting the Ukrainian military in the Donbas War. In addition, there were maritime accidents, cyberattacks, and increased political tensions over the first 8 years of the conflict. The battle significantly intensified in February 2022 when Russia began an invasion of Ukraine on a large scale. Since the war began a year ago, we will discuss top 10 reasons for the war on Ukraine and Russia. 10. 2008 NATO's decision in favor of Ukraine. The most disruptive conflict to hit Europe since 1945 is Russia's war in Ukraine, according to Cambridge University. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, claims that NATO's 2008 decision in favor of Ukraine's potential membership brought an existential threat to Russia's borders. While many in the West see this as a war that Putin chose, others attribute it to the end of the Cold War and the West's failure to provide Russia with adequate support after the fall of the Soviet Union. 9. Putin, grieved by the collapse of the Soviet Union, expressed his sorrow. Due to the deep cultural ties between Russia and Ukraine, Putin grieved the dissolution of the Soviet Union, which he had served in as a KGB officer. He also thought of Ukraine as a fictitious state. Moreover, Ukraine had been unappreciative, insulting Russia with its Maidan movement in 2014, which overthrew a pro-Russian government, and its strengthening of trade ties with the EU. 8. To stop Ukrainian assaults on the two secessionist regions of Donetsk and Lugansk. In order to stop Ukrainian attacks on the two breakaway areas of Donetsk and Lugansk, which Moscow recognized as independent republics, the Russian leader declared that military action was necessary. 7. Putin had asserted that the far-right Ukraine government might invade Russia. If their influence in the nation is not reduced, President Vladimir Putin has warned that Russia may be attacked by the far-right government of Ukraine. He said that Kiev was being armed by Western nations to fight Russia. 6. The potential for NATO enlargement was a less critical intermediate cause. A less important intermediary cause was the possibility of NATO expansion. The NATO-Russia Council was established by the West so that Russian military officials could attend some NATO meetings, but Russia anticipated more from the partnership. And while James Baker, the U.S. Secretary of State, had assured his Russian counterpart that NATO would not expand in the early 1990s, historians like Mary Surratt have shown that Baker swiftly changed his guarantee, which never had a written agreement to support it. 5. Putin's leadership has finally made Russia recognized as a global power. The leadership of President Vladimir Putin finally ensured that Russia is now seen as an energy giant, becoming the third largest producer of oil and the second largest producer of natural gas in the world after the collapse of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, in the early 1990s and the many years of economic struggle and internal strife that followed. 4. In spite of the low oil price, Russia was able to balance its budget in 2021. It's been reported that Russia accumulated $630 billion in foreign exchange reserves using revenue from the energy sector. For instance, Russia managed to balance its budget in 2021 despite the relatively low oil price of $45 per barrel, which was below the industry average of around $70 per barrel. 3. Just the Soviet Union accounted for 6% of Western Europe's oil imports in the 1960s. In the 1960s, only the Soviet Union was the source of 6% of Western Europe's oil imports. There was no doubt that the new oil pipeline, which was slated to run from the Russian Far East through Poland and Ukraine before ending in Germany, would significantly enhance the supply. It was inevitable that the Soviet Union would gain enormous coercive power as a result of this greater dependence. 2. Russia reduced the flow of gas via the pipelines. In order to fulfill its agreements with other nations in Western Europe, Russia reduced the flow of gas via the pipelines, leaving just enough. This action by Russia, in addition to exerting economic pressure on the pro-Western administration in Kyiv, served as justification for assertions that Ukraine was an unreliable gas transit nation. 1. All of this was caused by underlying factors that emerged after the end of the Cold War. The distant or underlying reasons that followed the conclusion of the Cold War were what led to all of this. At first, there was a lot of hope that the fall of the Soviet Union would enable the emergence of democracy and a market economy in Russia. This optimism was shared by both Russia and the West. Clinton and Yeltsin made a concerted attempt to improve their relationship in the early going. Russians, however, expected far more from the US than the loans and economic support it gave to Prime Minister Yegor Gaidar's administration. If you find the video informative, smash the like button and subscribe to the channel.